Hi and welcome to another edition of Top Tips Tuesday. Jeff here again from GCD Property. This week we're looking at 5 tips for investors looking to create a passive income for real estate. So number 1, we really need to understand the net yield. Quite often when we see properties being listed for rent or yield, it's usually the gross yield, because everyone's property expenses will vary, but it's the gross yield can be very misleading if there's a lot of property expenses or higher than average property expenses attached to that specific property. So the net yield means after all the expenses of the property. So there could be higher management costs, cleaning costs for student rooming, accommodation, things like that. All these things need to be taken into account. So number 1, when you're looking at a property for passive income, work out the net yield. Invest in multiple income properties. So this is where you're getting one income source, and these are becoming very popular for investors looking to build their property portfolios because the banks will look at your income coming in versus the expenses going out, and that can really help your cash flow. So these multiple income properties, we're doing a lot of these co-living properties now to cater for the demographic change. Single people as a percentage of the population are growing in number, and we can really take advantage of that as investors to create that product where there's a real need. So it could be co-living type properties, could be student accommodation, could be rooming accommodation, could be a dual occupancy properties which are attached dwellings, granny flats, etc. The councils in southeast Queensland, I know, are a lot more open to these multiple dwelling properties than they were even 12 or 24 months ago. So they realise we're in a rental crisis and land is at a premium, and we really need to increase the density in our cities. So the councils are more open to it, which is a great thing. So multiple income properties, or if you've got a home on a standard block, can we add an existing dwelling, another dwelling onto the property and create that income? If you're looking at properties with established second incomes and dwellings, one thing I would always check is that make sure it's council compliant and it meets all the regulations in terms of leasing agreements as well, to make sure that you're covered for insurances and doing everything above board correct, etc. So a lot of those older properties were converted and they're not always legal, so just make sure that's the case. Number 3, use a larger deposit. So larger deposit, smaller loan will help the cash flow of the property. Buy in areas where there's high population growth, where there's a lot more demand and people are moving to, that you'll see the rents increase over time quite dramatically. So we're looking to buy in high growth areas, and we're in the southeast Queensland corridor. Myself, I'm on the Gold Coast, and we've seen a massive jump in rental income over the last 18 to 24 months, and quite scary some of the stories we're being here of property managers increasing, or the landlords increasing the rent, just the fact of the shortage of supply. Supply and demand is one of those things, but if you're an investor and you're looking for those high yields, look for where the population's moving to create that extra demand, which will give you that higher income. And tip number 5 there, you could invest in regional areas. And the reason for that is those property prices, purchase prices, are much, much lower. So if you go into the capital cities, the yields are generally lower, but the capital growth will be stronger. The one way you could look at that, the opposite of that, was buying these regional areas where the entry price is much, much lower and you're still getting a reasonable rental return. Just word of advice or warning there, just be careful. If the town is actually shrinking in size, you're not going to achieve very little, if any, capital growth, and you could actually go down in value. So just be very careful. Regional areas, make sure that it's still an area where there's infrastructure going in and it's still growing in population, because one thing to have passive income, but you still want an element of capital growth to build your portfolio as well. So I hope that's helped. If you are looking for positive high income type properties, please reach out. Built a couple of these myself, great for passive income. Thanks for watching and see you next Tuesday.